Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and this is a place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. And I got to tell you, first episode of the year, fantastic, but it is cold outside here in Chicago. It was minus 13 wind chill when I went to the gym this morning. So I'm really glad to be inside and to be warm. If you're watching, you'll see I got a hat and a warm kind of over jackety coat sweater thing. And but you know what? Don't feel bad for me. I've chosen to live here. And if you're up in Canada or you're somewhere further north than me, you're going, come on, John, suck it up. You don't know what bad is, like when you look out your window and there's a polar bear there. So anyway, glad to be with you all to start off 22. Amazing, right? And so this episode, I want to focus on a creative aspect, a business aspect, and a soft skill aspect that each one of us may be able to implement and learn from. And so I want to speak directly to illustrators and designers today. And it's interesting because I kind of straddle both of those worlds. I'm an illustrator, and I think some people think of me more as an illustrator than anything else because I do draw an awful lot. But I'm also a designer, and I kind of backed into being a designer because I got involved in product development, and it was pretty interesting, the transition, because I never thought of myself as anything more than a painter, artist, airbrusher, illustrator, and I would put images on whatever anything it was that somebody wanted. I'd put images on a wall, I'd put images on a t-shirt. I wasn't working digitally, and so there were some limitations there, but I grew up pre-digital, really, and kind of straddled that chasm around 2000 when the time became clear to become digital. And it was pretty interesting because I found at the time that there weren't, at least before the advent of the internet, there weren't a lot of people in the area where I grew up that drew or painted or rendered, whatever your choice of word or term is. And so I was a little bit more unique in my skill set than I even understood as a young guy. And once I married my artist skill set to a design skill set, it became a powerful way to serve a client and to earn. And so I ended up, I didn't know a whole lot about manufacturing. I didn't know a whole lot about licensing. But what do we know before we actually get started and do things? We don't know a whole lot, right? So you can't expect to be a fully formed service provider when you begin to work in the job market. And, from everything I see in the job market right now, or the services market, it's like they're desperate for people. Like I don't quite know what's going on with the job market right now, but man, it seems like if you can offer a service and really help customers out with their problems, amazing. And so I started to figure some of this out in my mid-20s when I started working with a sculptor who made Happy Meal toys, and I was doing some design work for him. And he needed somebody who could draw a bunch of different views that were what we'd call control drawings. So a control drawing is something that a sculptor or manufacturer or a maker will use to stay within the parameters that are needed for production. Because, a Happy Meal toy, it's maybe designed here. It's probably designed in a bunch of other places now too, but designed here, and then, a prototype would be made, and then the manufacturing would happen overseas in China. Generally, I think that's where they would occur. And so you would have to have all the views, say, of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That was a movie in the 90s. And we'd have to design something where there was a simple feature, like maybe an arm would lift up and go down, and then something else would happen, like a gargoyle would pop up or something next to the hunchback. And I would need to create the concept with the sculptor, with the designer I was working with under his direction, but there was back and forth in communication. I mean, there's a time to know when you're somebody's hands and you're just helping them to get the visuals done so that you can communicate what it is they need, and then being a designer. And it kind of became a natural progression for me that I would make suggestions and we would maybe alter based on some of those suggestions, or I'd make suggestions that just didn't make any sense because I didn't fully understand the manufacturing process at the time. But you can't learn if you don't ask the questions, right? And I would encourage you, you've got to have some wisdom around who you're actually asking questions of. Like, I don't know that you want to be in the middle of a huge meeting where everybody is kind of in the know and knows what they're doing, and then you want to show what you don't know by asking a question. But, you can learn from that too. But be wise about the how and the when you do it. It's often times, I think, better maybe to pull somebody aside who's a bit of a mentor to you or a friend if you're working there, or if they're a client of yours. You want to be cautious, right? Because you're supposed to know your stuff. So you need to be wise about what you ask and how you ask and when you ask, and then can learn either from them or you can learn online. So you just want to be wise about the when, the where, the why, the who that you ask, because anyway, that's a whole other episode. So what I'm getting at right now is that after I worked with this toy designer for a while, and then started to work with other toy designers because, again, my skill set met their needs, I went to work for a toy company, for an actual manufacturer. And what happened there was I learned more about the manufacturing side because we had injection molding machines and we had blow molding machines. And then if we needed something rotocast, that would be something someone would do somewhere else. But anyway, I could actually go up and talk to the engineers and ask them about the specifics of design, what I needed to know as a designer when I was designing something, when I was drawing these pretty pictures and then trying to figure out could things actually be made. And engineers are not fond of somebody who gives them drawings that are just pie in the sky, and then they got to figure it out, if the pie in the sky person doesn't know what the parameters are. But, they love it when you come to them and you've got something they can actually make. Like, I always try to look at my job as making another person's life easier, or making my client's life easier. And so being able to be behind the scenes and see the molds and see how the molds were put into the machines and how they functioned. And they actually had another company as well that they owned. It was a separate company, but they owned it. And they manufactured the blow molds for like big wheels for the bodies or for tires. And we went out and visited them one day, and I got to see the CNC machine cutting and learn about that process, all the way down to the people in the back who are just polishing these steel molds. We're talking like a ton of steel that they'd be cutting into. I mean, it was just amazing to be able to see that process. And when I left there, I kept them as a client. Like, I didn't really want to work there. And I was able to keep them as a client. And then I began to work with other manufacturers, and not just on toys. It would be a little bit of everything. But, knocking my background over. So I found myself becoming a designer. And that didn't mean I wasn't an artist. What was happening was I was becoming an artist who had design skills, and I could sit in a room with engineers and sculptors and makers, people who actually make the stuff, and we had more of a shorthand because I understood how things were manufactured. And if I didn't, I could ask them and they could get me there, and I could learn enough from them to give them the drawings that they needed to be able to communicate clearly what it was that they needed to get done and what they needed for me to get it done. So here's my point with this whole topic I've been covering is if you're an illustrator artist, if you're a 2D person, even if you're 3D, even if you're a sculptor, figure out how to add a design element to your skill set, because it's going to allow you to work with designers, and it's going to allow you to work with corporations, and corporate money is really good money, okay? And I think that's something that as artists, I'll hear or I'll read somebody saying, oh, I had nothing in me today. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. Okay, I get that. I have creative days like that. But if you don't have the discipline to push forward, then you're not going to be a good service provider. And that's what this show is about, right? The business of art and the art of business. So how do you take your art skills and discipline them into a resource for others that can earn you income? And so I think that as artists, we can be a little too loosey-goosey. And I think that that's also kind of the romance of being an artist and the belief by artists and by others. Like a lot of engineers believe that about artists, and it's because a lot of artists believe it about themselves. So you got to figure out how to learn and then bring your art into parameters and be able to fit it where an engineer would need it. Like the Hunchback that I was talking about earlier for the Happy Meal, where I had to do a front view and then I had to do a left side view, a back view, a right side view, and it was asymmetrical. So, I've got an arm forward, an arm up, and so we need to know anatomy, and we need to understand how to read a style guide from a licensor. In this case, it was Disney, and then be able to adjust things on the fly to make them look good for our purposes, but also something that would be satisfactory to Disney as they're looking over it with a scrutinizing eye, and you want to get their approval, because you got to jump that hurdle too. So there are all these hurdles to jump. So as an artist, as an illustrator, learn how to design. Learn how to be a designer. And you can do it on the fly. You can do it on the job. I've done it on the job. Okay, so it's something you can do. And then you designers out there, whether you're an engineer, maybe you're more of a sculptor designer, maybe you work in 3D, in Forager or in Maya or something like that, any one of those, ZBrush. I would encourage you, and even if you're more of a pure engineer designer, I would encourage you to have a drawing pad handy or blank pieces of paper next to you and start drawing. Start drawing a little bit every day. Try drawing things that are out of your comfort zone. If you're a person who draws tires and cars and things that are kind of hard-edged, industrial, draw things that are organic. Draw cartoons. Draw things from different angles. Draw storyboards. Draw little bits and pieces so that you're increasing your drawing skills. And that is going to help you be a more adept communicator. The visual communication of something, I say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? If you can draw some, it's going to increase your value. And so it's like illustrators, artists, okay, and designers meet those skill sets meeting in the middle. Man, that is a powerful set of tools coming together, and you're really arming yourself with the ability to help solve problems and increase your value. And I don't care whether you're an independent and it's your own company and you're doing your own thing, or if you're working for someone, if you are an employee and you can build those skills, it's just going to make you that much more valuable to your employer, and then it'll be valuable to you when you move on to the next thing. Okay, so that's my creative segment today. That illustrator skills, drawing skills, and designer skills, knowing how things are made and putting them together. Right? It's you got your chocolate and my peanut butter cup. I guess it's just peanut butter at the time. There's no cup, right? You got your peanut butter and my chocolate, and then you end up with a Reese's peanut butter cup, and it tastes so good. And apart, peanut butter and chocolate are different, but together they make this incredible taste for your buds on your tongue. And if you can marry two skills together, take a look at that. That's powerful, okay? All right, enough on that. So business, I want to talk a little bit about something called project scope and maybe more appropriately, scope creep. Scope creep. Have you heard of scope creep before? Scope creep is where a project, and maybe more appropriately, a client has no parameters around you or your agreement on the project, and you have this a project is just growing and growing and growing, and you've already given them a price. You've given them a price, say, for a final illustration of some packaging and what you're going to do on the front of the package. And then the client comes back to you and says, all right, let's get some sketches done. You get some sketches, they love it. And then you start moving into color, they love it. And then somewhere along the way, they may say, hey, can you add this? Or can you add this? Or you know what, we decided that we're going to scrap this and go in a whole new direction. And if you're not aware of scope creep and you don't set up an agreement or terms with your client early on, you can end up with a nightmare of a project that never ends or just turns into something ridiculous. And maybe you're charging $3,000 for a project, or it could be $500, it could be any amount, but now it's turned into a monster that you have no control over and you're way over budget because you haven't set up terms or parameters around that. We've probably all been there at some point in our life where we've agreed to do something and the person maybe you're dealing with, either they don't understand that designing and creating is work and it's not just something that you love to sit around and do when you're working on their project. Like I think there's kind of that, again, that romance I was talking about earlier kind of flows into, well, you enjoy what you do, so you might as well do it all the time for this little amount of money. But then they may also know that they've kind of got you early on when you don't set up terms. Like not setting up terms with a client is grounds for, oh, you're really green, or you're really young, or you really don't know what you're doing. And some people like to get you there. So here's what I encourage you to do. This is what I do with my clients. I find out what it is they need. I find out where we're at in the process, and then I set terms up around that. Here's a for instance. I had a company approach me and they wanted me to do 4 different designs and final illustrations for some packaging art. So kind of looking at me like graphic design even though it's illustrative, all right? So we went back and forth a little bit on price and finally landed at a price for these 4 illustrations. Now, each illustration was different. It had a different topic and a different feel. But each of them would be under one brand. So the titles would all look the same, and then it would be under the brand of whatever kind of kit it was. So I came up with some terms for them, and the terms were, we'll have a design process with sketches to get to a point we want to get to. Then we'll have a rendering process to get to final. And for the sketches, I had a certain price, and let's just say that was, $500 for these initial sketches per item. And then there were 2 rounds of revisions. So I would do an initial sketch, And then if they wanted a wholesale change, I'd make a wholesale change. And then if they wanted some small changes or a wholesale change, I'd do the next wholesale change. And so that would be the 2 rounds of revisions. And then beyond that, there was a new price and a new rate. We'd have to take a look at it and add some prices to it. And so I did the same with the rendering. I'm rendering with 2 rounds of revisions. So I'd lay stuff out, give them a look. They'd give me some feedback. I'd give them another look and give me some feedback. And then after that, if there were big changes, then there would be some costs and new terms that would come into play. So that way, your project isn't this open-ended nightmare that just goes on forever and ever and ever, because these things can go on forever. And at least you know you're on a path. And then if it's not the right path and you get to the end of the term, some people even have kill fees in their agreements where it's like, all right, we got so far, nobody's happy with anything, so they pay you, a certain amount of the project, or they'll even pay you a fee just to be done with it. And that's not always a bad thing. That doesn't always terminate the relationship. It may terminate the project. It may be something on their end where they go, oh my goodness, it is a project that we got invested into and it's not going to make us any money. We need to kill the project. So not every project that gets killed is a reflection on you or your work, or on the client and their work. Sometimes you just kind of end it. So think about that long and hard. I don't care if you're just starting out. Usually when we start out, we're a little bit more timid and we're just happy to be working. Work out terms early so that the scope doesn't get so large that you're either floundering in a project that never ends, and or you're floundering in a project that is just not going to pay you enough. All right. So that's scope creep. Avoid scope creep. All right, the last thing I want to talk about today are soft skills in business. So soft skills are often the relational skills that we have either with our cohorts or our clients. All right, and the ones I want to bring up today are being generous and graceful in your relationships. Be generous and graceful in your relationships. I've had a number of one-off clients, and those are fine, and you can still be generous and graceful there. But when you have clients that are ongoing, and they're not all going to be your best clients, your best friends, right? The people that maybe you grow close to in business, because you can have professional friends, and some of them may go beyond that, and you become truly close with them. But many of my clients are professional friends, and just like any kind of relationship, friendship, there are ups and downs, and people have bad days and they have bad weeks. And it may not even be professionally for them, that everything may be going great at work, but somebody is sick at home. Maybe there's somebody with an ongoing illness, or maybe there's a challenge with a child. Maybe there's stuff going on in their marriage, and some of that pours out onto you, or you hear it in how they speak with you that particular day or week. And so you don't want to go right to, they're not being professional, or they're not being this, or they're not being that, and then, let a wedge come between you and them. Oftentimes what I'll try to do is if I am calling up a client that I know, I'll ask them how they're doing, and they may say, I'm fine. And it's shorter than usual. Or they may say they're not fine. And then I'll dig a little bit, gently. I'm not trying to find out about them, but I want to know them, and I want to know what's going on in their lives, right? There's a difference there. One is extracting information, one is being caring. And people know when you're being caring or when you're not, usually, right? Unless you're really slick and you're not caring and you try to look like it. But I'll ask, if somebody says, I'm fine, and it's kind of short, and I'll say, hey, are you? I don't believe you with what you said. And they may say to me, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just really busy. I got some stuff going on, but I'm okay. Or they may say, I'm having a really bad week, or I'm having a really bad go of it here, and it's rough. And I'll say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anything you want to talk about or share? Anything that I just maybe they need to be heard, right? And sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll say no. But what happens is they'll realize that you actually are more than just a voice on the other end of the line, or an email at the end of the day, or in the middle of the day, in the middle of the chaos, and that you're actually somebody who cares. Now, I would tell you, don't do this just to do it, to be manipulative and try to manipulate people into think you're caring. You need to be legitimate about it, because they'll find you out, and that'll be bad news for you, okay? But I would encourage you, add this soft skill of being generous in your listening, being generous in when somebody's really having a bad day, and maybe they take it out on you, just kind of figure out what's going on. I mean, I've had people be really upset when I'm talking to them, and then they kind of snapped at me, and maybe not in that moment or that day, but maybe a few days later I'll come back around it, and I try to do it in person or on a phone call, if at worst a phone call, so they can hear my voice, and I'll just ask them, hey, it sounded like the other day you were really upset about something, and you snapped at me. Did I do something? And so this does a couple of things. One, it allows your client to let you know that you saw how they were behaving. And two, it allows you to see if you are actually missing something. Did you do something that kind of ticked them off, or set them off, or something like that? And it's a really, really good thing to do, because it helps you to build relationships. Now, again, you want to be wise with who you're doing this with. If this is somebody you don't really have a relationship with and they snapped at you, I don't know that you need to go digging into that, other than finding out, did you do something wrong? And then if you did, apologize, right? Whatever. But these are the clients that maybe are a little bit closer to you, and you're continuing to build a relationship with them, and you're maintaining that relationship. You want to make sure things are good, because life is hard. People have hard times, and sometimes it's hard at work, sometimes it's tight budgets, who knows what it is. But I think that if you're somebody who's willing to invest relationally into your relationships with your clients, that's going to go a lot further than maybe somebody who isn't. Okay, because people like to work with people who they think care about them and their business, and they like to work with people they like. So there you have it. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and follow. And then if you could leave me a 5-star review, or rating, I guess, 5-star rating, and a review would be great. I'd love to hear what you guys like about the episodes. And then if you are watching on YouTube, will you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell on there too, and it'll notify you when new episodes come out. And I just hope that you have an incredible 2022. I hope that you're doing whatever it is, you're taking that next step, that next stride to grow in your development as a creative resource for clients. Maybe you're working for somebody, and you've got an eye on working for yourself one day, and so you're adding those skills and you're learning how the business works. If you're working somewhere, learn all the ins and outs inside that business. That's a huge benefit that you have before you go independent, and then try to keep them as a client when you leave one day. All right. So on behalf of the Breakthrough Creative, I'm John McDavitt, and I will see you next time. Cheers.